The first scream echoed through the glittering hall of the Galactic Emperor's palace, cutting through the music of celebration like a blade through silk. It came from a man who had been laughing seconds ago, a wealthy dignitary sipping blue wine while boasting about how Earth would soon be reduced to ashes. Now he was on the floor, eyes wide, a dagger embedded in his throat, thrown from somewhere no one could see. The party froze. Even the Emperor, seated on his towering throne of chrome and firelight, stopped mid-toast. Then the walls shimmered, and 12 figures stepped out from the shadows, each dressed in armor as black as the void, faces hidden beneath masks shaped like predators. The Eclipse squad had arrived, and across the galaxy, entire planets would shudder when they heard this story. On Earth, people had no idea any of this was happening. The United Earth Council sat in its underground chamber, the air thick with arguments and rising panic. The assassinations had started small, minor diplomats, mid-level scientists, but everyone knew this was only the beginning. The Empire wanted Earth crippled before anyone even fired a shot. Now the Council had gathered to decide how to fight back, but the room was filled with shouting instead of answers. Generals demanded fleets we did not have. Politicians begged for diplomacy with an empire that had crushed 10 civilizations this year alone. Then, in the middle of the chaos, an elderly councilwoman who had barely spoken all meeting leaned forward and said in a quiet voice that sliced through the noise like a blade, "Send him." At first no one understood. The councilwoman, Sato Reina, repeated herself. "Send the Shadow of Kyoto." Some chuckled nervously, thinking it was a joke, but her eyes burned with the kind of conviction that kills laughter. The Shadow was a story told among intelligence officers, a whisper about a man who had ended wars alone, whose methods belonged to an age before guns and spaceships. No one knew his real name. They only knew the legend, a ghost in human shape, trained in arts so old that even history had nearly forgotten them. "You want to send a myth against assassins with plasma rifles," one general scoffed. "Do you have anything better?" Reina snapped back. "Because right now, myths are all we have left." While they argued, the assassins made their next move. In orbit above Earth, aboard a ship shaped like a dagger, the Eclipse squad planned their next strike. Their leader, Talon, was a tall figure in jagged black armor, his eyes glowing faint red behind his mask. He had killed kings, warlords, even a telepathic high priest on Titan Prime, but Earth's stubborn refusal to surrender made this job personal. They thought themselves clever, these humans, hiding their leaders in bunkers and shadow councils. He would drag them into the light one corpse at a time. But then his second-in-command brought troubling news. One of their own was dead. Slain in the city of Kyoto while stalking a target. "Impossible," Vex said. "No one kills Eclipse assassins. No one." And yet the feed showed it clearly. A brief flash of motion in a dark alley, the assassin spinning, a blur too fast to track, and then silence forever. The killer never appeared on any camera again. For the first time in years, Talon felt something like curiosity. That curiosity deepened into fury when, hours later, the council made their choice. Deep in the mountains of Japan, a lone man knelt before a shrine as the wind tugged at his black robes. He carried no visible weapon. His face was calm, unreadable, as if he were made of stone. When the council emissary arrived, breathless and sweating, the man only listened silently before nodding once. He did not give his name. He only said, "I will go." Before midnight he had already left Earth aboard a stolen freighter, his presence so quiet that most of the crew did not even realize he was aboard until he stepped out of the shadows days later. The smuggler captain nearly fainted, convinced this man was some vengeful ghost. The stranger said nothing, only sharpened a blade that looked like it belonged to a museum rather than a war. But the Eclipse squad was already hunting him. Talon had split his remaining assassins into pairs, each one tasked with scouring different systems for the mysterious killer. It was no longer about Earth's leaders. It was about pride. Reputation. The Eclipse squad's name was built on terror, on perfection. If word spread that someone was hunting them back, their entire empire of fear would crumble. The first clash came sooner than anyone expected. In the crowded neon streets of a neutral space station, one assassin found himself alone, separated from his partner by the press of alien bodies and flickering holograms. That was when the lights went out. Just for 2 seconds. When they came back, the assassin was already dead. His body dangled from a communications tower, a single blade through his chest. No one had seen the killer come or go. Panic rippled through the streets. Someone whispered about a shadow that moved like smoke, like water, like nothing anyone had ever seen. By the time Talon heard the news, 2 more of his assassins were missing. The fear he inspired in others now began to creep into his own bones, unfamiliar and unwelcome. Who was this man? How did he kill soldiers trained in every weapon, every style of death known across 1,000 worlds? The Council received a single encrypted message hours later. I am in pursuit. Do not interfere. No signature. No location. Just the promise of a hunt that was only beginning. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, a man moved like a ghost through enemy territory, silent and patient, while the most feared killers in the galaxy realized they might not be the hunters anymore. The freighter carrying the ninja slipped through the void like a ghost ship, its mismatched engines coughing occasionally but somehow holding together. The smuggler crew had seen all kinds of passengers before, from runaway nobles to alien mercenaries, but none unsettled them like the silent figure sitting cross-legged in the corner of the cargo bay. He barely moved. He barely breathed. One of the crew swore he had seen the man vanish for hours at a time, only to reappear exactly where he had been sitting, as if time itself had folded around him. They called him the shadow behind his back because no one dared ask his name. On the 3rd day, Captain Briggs finally gathered the courage to approach him. Briggs was a man who could charm money from a miser and talk his way out of most firing squads, but the quiet stranger made him sweat like a rookie smuggler again. He asked the only question that came to mind. Are you planning to kill anyone on my ship? The ninja looked at him for the first time since boarding. His eyes were as calm as still water, the kind of calm that made men nervous. Only if I must, he said softly. That answer did not help Briggs sleep any better. Meanwhile, far behind them, the Eclipse squad hunted. Talon listened to reports with growing frustration as his assassins swept through systems, each one turning up nothing but rumors. A shadow on a freighter. A whisper of a man moving through backwater ports. Always just behind him, always one step too slow. Vex had started as a professional. Kill the targets, get paid, move on. But this was different now. This was personal. On a frozen moon orbiting a gas giant, 2 assassins cornered what they thought was their prey in an abandoned mining outpost. They stalked through the dark corridors with weapons drawn, senses sharp. A faint sound of footsteps echoed ahead of them. They exchanged hand signals and moved like liquid shadows toward the noise. The footsteps stopped. One assassin raised his rifle and switched to thermal vision. The corridor ahead was empty. Something moved behind them. By the time Vex received the report, both assassins were gone. No bodies. No traces. Only the recording from a helmet camera, showing a blur of motion and a blade glinting once before the feed cut out. On the freighter, the ninja repaired a broken drone the crew had found drifting in the cargo hold. It was an old mining unit, dented and half dead, but he restored it with surprising care. When it whirred back to life, its simple AI latched onto him like an abandoned puppy. It followed him around the ship, bumping into walls, chirping in confusion whenever he vanished from sight. The crew laughed nervously about it, calling it his pet. The ninja said nothing, though one corner of his mouth twitched almost into a smile when the drone tried to mimic his slow movements. At the next spaceport, trouble waited. The station orbited a dying star, its markets crammed with traders, gamblers, and thieves from every corner of the galaxy. Neon signs blinked in languages no human could read. Music pounded from bars while vendors shouted about deals that would almost certainly end in regret. The smuggler crew fanned out to buy supplies. The ninja disappeared into the crowds, moving like smoke, unseen even when people brushed past him. 2 assassins had been waiting for hours, disguised among the crowds. When they spotted the smuggler crew, they smiled behind their masks. It was easy to guess the ninja would not be far. They were right. The lights went out across the entire market for exactly 4 seconds. When they came back, one assassin lay on the floor with his weapon gone, neck twisted at an impossible angle. The other spun wildly, firing into shadows that no longer held anyone. Panicked civilians screamed and scattered. By the time station security arrived, the surviving assassin had vanished too, though his body was found later in a ventilation shaft, throat cut so cleanly it looked like a single stroke of light had done it. Vexed Talon slammed his fist against the metal wall of his ship when he heard. 5 dead now. His killers. His perfect record shredded by a single man with no name. The Empire itself began to whisper about this phantom from Earth. The Emperor was not pleased. Vex could feel the leash tightening around his neck. But the assassin leader was nothing if not cunning. He began to study the reports more carefully, noticing patterns in the killings. The ninja always struck in close quarters, always left before reinforcements arrived, and never took trophies. This was not just a man. This was a soldier with discipline drilled into his bones, the kind of discipline that belonged to dying traditions most of the galaxy had forgotten. Vex sent orders. No more splitting up. No more hunting in pairs. From now on the Eclipse squad would move together, set traps instead of chasing rumors. If the ghosts wanted to stalk them, they would turn the darkness itself into bait. Meanwhile, the ninja discovered something far more dangerous than assassins. In a backroom deal on the space station, he overheard smugglers talking about a message from the Empire. It spoke of plans to frame Earth for assassinating Imperial ambassadors, using the Eclipse squad as both weapon and scapegoat. Once the ambassadors were dead, the Empire would have legal grounds for full planetary extermination under galactic law. It was a perfect plan. The assassins would die taking the blame. Earth would burn. The Empire would expand again. The ninja listened without a word, then slipped away before anyone noticed him. He understood now why the Eclipse squad hunted him so fiercely. He was not just a threat to their pride. He was a threat to the entire conspiracy. On the freighter that night, Captain Briggs found him staring out at the stars as the mining drone hovered loyally nearby. Briggs, nerves jangling from too much cheap whiskey, asked if the rumors were true about Earth being framed. Yes, the ninja said simply. Briggs asked what he planned to do about it. The man turned toward him, eyes like frozen steel. Stop them. 3 hours later, another assassin body was found drifting through space, helmet cracked, oxygen gone. A single word had been carved into the armor plate across his chest. The derelict mining platform drifted silently in orbit above a dead planet, its jagged metal skeleton turning slowly in the thin light of a dying sun. Once it had been alive with workers and machines tearing minerals from rock, but now only the windless emptiness of space claimed it. Rusted corridors rattled with every shift in gravity. Abandoned drones floated through broken airlocks, silent witnesses to its decay. It was here that Vex Talon chose to lay his trap, knowing the ghosts from Earth could not resist coming for them if he believed they were vulnerable. The Eclipse squad gathered in the shadows of the ruined station, weapons ready, eyes scanning every corner. They were hunters again, though unease whispered at the back of their minds like cold breath. 5 of their own were already dead, cut down in silence by a man who moved like death wearing human skin. The ninja arrived without announcement. One moment the platform was silent except for the creak of metal and the occasional crackle of a damaged power line. The next, a shape slipped through the airlock, barely visible against the broken walls. No one saw how he moved. One assassin swore later he was certain the man had been there all along, hiding in the thin layers of shadow. Vex Talon watched him approach along the central corridor, his black robes fluttering faintly in the stale air, his face calm and unreadable. The assassin leader felt his pulse steady. Finally, he would see this phantom in the flesh. The platform erupted into chaos. Automated defense turrets sprang from the walls, spitting streams of plasma where the ninja had stood a heartbeat before. He was gone, moving with a speed that made no sense, appearing behind one turret to drive a blade through its core before it finished turning. The assassins closed in, firing arcs of energy that scorched walls and ceiling alike, but the man seemed to fold around the attacks, never in the same place twice, his movements precise and economical, like a man slicing through water instead of air. In zero gravity near the collapsed mining shaft, the fight turned brutal. One assassin lunged with an electrified spear, spinning through the air with practiced grace, only for the ninja to catch the weapon mid-strike and twist, sending its wielder tumbling into darkness. Another came at him from behind with a plasma-edged blade, sparks hissing where metal kissed air, but the ninja moved his head by a fraction, the strike whispering past harmlessly before his elbow crashed into the attacker's throat. Bodies drifted, spinning silently through the ruined station as if the battle were happening underwater. Vex Talon himself joined the fight, his twin vibroblades glowing faintly red as he closed in. He was fast, faster than any human had a right to be, the result of genetic enhancements bought with blood-soaked credits. The first clash of their blades sent shockwaves rattling through the narrow corridor. Vex struck with ferocity, each blow designed to kill, but the ninja's parries were effortless, his face unreadable. For the first time in years, Vex felt the edge of fear as he realized this man was not struggling. He was studying him. The assassins regrouped, moving to encircle the intruder. It should have been over then. Numbers and technology should have crushed him. But the ninja changed the battle in ways they could not predict. He shut down a bulkhead light with a flicked blade, plunging half the corridor into darkness. He moved through it like smoke, reappearing behind one assassin to slice the power cell from his rifle before vanishing again. Explosions ripped through the station as stray shots hit fuel lines. The entire platform shuddered, throwing fighters into walls, breaking formations. In the chaos, the mining drone appeared. The battered little machine had followed the ninja from the freighter, its simple programming apparently unable to comprehend the concept of staying safe. It floated into the corridor, beeping uncertainly as plasma fire scorched past. One assassin actually hesitated, confused by the sight of the tiny drone drifting straight through the center of the battlefield, and that hesitation cost him his life when the ninja stepped from behind it and struck. The absurdity of it all would have been funny if not for the bodies piling up in silence. Then something unexpected happened. One of the surviving assassins, a scarred woman named Kale, shouted over the comms that she wanted to speak. Vex almost killed her himself for the distraction until he realized she was addressing the enemy, not him. She tossed her blade aside, letting it spin slowly through the airless room. She said the Empire had betrayed them. The assassins had been promised glory and riches, but she had intercepted a message proving the Emperor planned to erase them once Earth was destroyed, framing them for everything before cutting them down like loose ends. Vex demanded proof, but Kale only laughed bitterly. The message was clear. They were all dead already. The ninja said nothing through all of this, only watching with eyes like cold steel. Kale looked at him then, her expression hard. She offered him information about the Empire's doomsday weapon in exchange for letting her walk away alive. The Emperor, she said, had built an AI capable of burning Earth's atmosphere in minutes if the assassination plot failed. It was locked on a timer now, awaiting only the final order. The station groaned around them as fire spread through the eastern wing, the battle having torn through fuel lines and power cores alike. Vex Talon stood motionless, blade still in hand, as the truth sank in. The Emperor who had hired him now saw him as nothing more than a scapegoat to be erased. Honor meant nothing. Loyalty meant nothing. Only power remained, and Vex realized he was not on the side of power anymore. The ninja turned and began walking toward the escape bay without a word. Kale followed, still alive only because he allowed it. Vex Talon watched them go, hatred twisting inside him, but it was no longer aimed at the man from Earth. As the station burned behind them, the surviving assassins retreated into the shadows of space. Some looked to Vex for orders, but he gave none. His eyes were on the Empire now, and for the first time since this began, the most feared killer in the galaxy was unsure who the true enemy was. The ninja returned to the freighter with new information burned into his mind. The Emperor would destroy Earth not because it was necessary, but because it was convenient. The clock was already ticking. The next move would decide not just one planet's fate, but perhaps the balance of power across the entire galaxy. The Imperial capital stretched across an entire planet like a metal ocean, its towers piercing the clouds, its streets glowing with neon rivers of speeders and shuttles. The air itself smelled of ozone and power, humming with the constant throb of industry and ambition. Above it all rose the Imperial spire, the seat of the Emperor, a dagger of black steel stabbing into the sky. Few outsiders ever saw the city beneath its endless security grids. Fewer still lived long enough to leave. Now a single freighter drifted toward the outskirts, blending with the millions of vessels swarming like insects around the great machine of empire. On board, the ninja watched in silence, his face unreadable as always, while Captain Briggs muttered curses about suicide missions and unpaid debts. The plan was simple in theory and impossible in practice. Slip into the capital, infiltrate the Imperial spire, find the control core of the Doomsday AI, and destroy it before the Emperor gave the final order. Every corridor would crawl with soldiers. Every entrance would bristle with scanners. The entire city was a labyrinth designed to keep people like him out. Yet the man from Earth did not seem troubled. He only adjusted the strap on his battered pack, as if this were merely another evening stroll instead of a journey into the beating heart of galactic tyranny. The first step was getting past the port security ring. The freighter carried forged cargo codes from 3 different criminal syndicates, each one guaranteed to work or come with a free funeral. Briggs transmitted them with a smile that looked more like a man baring his teeth. The scanners blinked once, twice, then cleared them for entry. Briggs let out a breath that shook his whole body. The ninjas simply stepped off the ship without a word, vanishing into the crowds flowing through the port's vast corridors. Disguised as workers and traders, the smuggler crew spread out through the Undercity to create diversions. At one checkpoint, a crate of illegal fireworks mysteriously caught fire, sending screaming merchants running as explosions filled the air with blinding light. At another, a forged medical alert triggered a fake quarantine, locking down half a district while panicked officials shouted contradictory orders. Everywhere the crew moved, chaos bloomed behind them like flowers in fast motion. Amid the confusion, the ninja slipped into the maintenance tunnels beneath the Imperial spire. Security drones floated overhead, their scanners sweeping through steam and shadows. He moved in silence, clinging to walls, vanishing into crawl spaces only a desperate or madman would enter. Twice patrols passed within arm's reach without ever noticing him. When he reached a sealed bulkhead, he simply waited until a worker came through and slid behind him before the door closed. On the 50th floor, trouble struck. A squad of assassins emerged from the smoke of a burning checkpoint, weapons drawn. For one tense heartbeat it seemed the Eclipse squad had come for vengeance, but then vexed Talon himself appeared, cutting down 2 Imperial guards blocking the corridor. He tossed their rifles aside and turned to the ninja, his face hidden behind his mask but his voice sharp with fury. "The Emperor betrayed us all," he said. "He will burn your planet and bury my squad with the evidence. I want his heart on a blade as much as you do." The ninja studied him for a long moment before giving the smallest nod. No words, no promises, just that single motion. Vex barked orders to his surviving assassins, who fanned out to clear the next hallways. Old enemies turned uneasy allies in a city about to drown in its own chaos. The smuggler crew chose that exact moment to start a bar brawl 3 districts away. Briggs swore later it had been part of the plan, though most witnesses claimed it began when one of his engineers accused a 6-eyed alien of cheating at cards. Either way, the fight spilled into the streets, overturning speeders, setting vendor stalls ablaze, and drawing half the city's security forces into the mess. Back in the Imperial spire, the Emperor watched the spreading chaos on a wall of monitors, his expression unreadable. He was a man carved from ambition and arrogance, wrapped in robes woven with circuitry, his eyes glowing faintly with cybernetic upgrades. He had ruled for decades through fear and precision. Now some ghost from a backwater planet threatened his plans, and the idea infuriated him more than he admitted even to himself. He ordered more troops into the streets, unaware that the chaos itself was the real weapon aimed at his throne. Deep in the spire's lower levels, The ninja and the assassins reached the data vault containing the AI control systems. The door loomed 3 stories tall, covered in security sigils pulsing with light. Talon gestured to one of his hackers, who knelt beside the panel with trembling fingers. Sweat dripped from the man's brow as he bypassed firewalls older than most planets. The door opened with a hiss of escaping pressure, revealing a chamber filled with glowing servers and a single core humming with cold intelligence. Before they reached it, the Emperor's personal guard struck. Clad in crimson armor and carrying halberds crackling with energy, they moved in perfect formation, blades slicing the air with military precision. The battle exploded among the servers, shadows and light flashing between pillars of data storage as blades clashed and rifles spat plasma. The ninja flowed through the fight like a phantom, appearing behind one guard to snap his neck before vanishing into steam and fire. Talon fought like a man possessed, cutting through soldiers with twin blades that left trails of burning air. Yet for every guard they felled, 2 more seemed to appear, until the chamber rang with metal on metal and the screams of dying men. Then the Emperor himself arrived. Surrounded by elite guards, his voice boomed through the chamber like the wrath of a god. He called Talon a traitor, accused the assassins of conspiring with Earth, promised death for all of them. His words dripped poison and authority, and even some of the assassins faltered at the sound. But Vex only laughed bitterly, the sound harsh in the smoke-choked room. He shouted back that loyalty meant nothing to a ruler who burned his own soldiers for convenience. The Emperor raised one hand, and the entire chamber locked down with a shriek of steel. Blast doors slammed shut. Energy fields crackled to life. The ninja realized too late that they were trapped. The Emperor had not come to crush intruders. He had come to kill everyone inside and bury the evidence beneath layers of silence and ash. Alarms blared as automated defenses unfolded from the walls, targeting assassins and ninja alike. Talon spun toward the man from Earth, eyes burning behind his mask, and in that instant both knew the uneasy alliance had just turned into a war for survival against the throne itself. The chamber erupted into chaos as the Emperor's trap snapped shut. Blinding energy fields cut off every exit while the walls came alive with defense drones unfolding like steel insects, eyes glowing red as they locked onto every living target. The ninja dove aside as a line of plasma bolts scorched the floor where he had stood a heartbeat before. Talon cursed viciously and hurled one of his blades through a drone's optical sensor, sparks spraying across the floor as it collapsed in a smoking heap. The assassins scattered behind pillars and server banks, their black armor flashing under the relentless firestorm. The Emperor stood above it all on a raised platform, his robes billowing as if in some private wind, his cybernetic eyes burning with cold amusement. He had planned this perfectly. The intruders would die, the AI core would remain untouched, and the galaxy would hear nothing but the official story that assassins from Earth and traitors from his own ranks had turned on each other before Imperial forces heroically purged them. But the Emperor had underestimated how stubborn cornered men could be. The ninja moved first. Sliding between cover with inhuman speed, he closed the distance to the nearest defense turret before it could track him. A single slash of his blade severed its barrel, the weapon hissing as it died in a shower of sparks. He used the wreckage as a springboard to leap onto the next drone, landing silent as smoke before plunging his blade through its central processor. Around him, the assassins fought like wolves, their fury turned not against the intruder they had hunted across half the galaxy but against the master who had betrayed them all. Talon carved a path toward the Emperor's platform, each movement precise and lethal. His twin vibroblades spun in arcs of red light, dismembering drones and guards alike, but the defenses seemed endless. For every machine that fell, 2 more unfolded from the walls, shrieking warnings in cold mechanical voices. The chamber shook as an energy cannon dropped from the ceiling, its barrel charging with a rising whine. The ninja sprinted toward the cannon before it could fire. His body blurred through shadows and smoke, dodging plasma bolts that sliced through steel like paper. He reached the base of the weapon, drove his blade deep into its power conduit, and leapt clear as it exploded in a fireball that hurled wreckage across the chamber. The blast dropped 2 drones and half a dozen Imperial guards, buying the intruders precious seconds. Kale, the scarred assassin who had revealed the Emperor's treachery, fought back-to-back with two of her comrades near the AI core itself. She shouted over the roar of weapons that the control systems were shielded by a separate power grid. They would need to reach the command console behind the Emperor's platform to shut it down. Vexed Talon snarled that he would handle the Emperor if someone else reached the console. The ninja was already moving before he finished speaking. He sprinted along the edge of the chamber, silent as smoke, vaulting over wreckage and bodies alike while the remaining assassins drew fire to give him cover. Two drones barred his path, mechanical limbs spinning saw blades that screamed as they cut the air. He slid beneath the first, severing its legs as he passed, then vaulted off the collapsing wreckage to drive his blade into the second's core before it could react. Vexed Talon reached the platform at the same moment the Emperor descended its steps, a curved energy blade igniting in his hand with a hiss like tearing metal. The two clashed in a storm of steel and light, their blades carving sparks across the floor as they moved faster than unaugmented eyes could follow. Vex fought with the fury of betrayal, the precision of a killer whose pride had been shattered. The Emperor fought like a man who had ruled too long to imagine losing. The ninja reached the command console under a hail of plasma fire. He dropped 3 guards in seconds, his blade flickering between them like lightning, then slammed a stolen access chip into the panel. Lines of alien code filled the screen as he worked, fingers moving with surprising speed for someone trained to kill, not hack. Alarms howled as the system resisted his intrusion. Kale's voice crackled over a stolen comm unit that the AI was minutes from activation. If the Emperor survived long enough to issue the final command, Earth would burn no matter who won this fight. Vexed Talon drove the Emperor back step by step, their blades locking in showers of sparks, until the ruler of half the galaxy snarled a single word and triggered his cybernetics to full power. His speed doubled in an instant, strikes coming like hammer blows of lightning. Vex barely blocked in time, one blade shattering under the assault. The Emperor lunged for the kill. The ninja triggered the virus at that exact moment. The AI core's lights shifted from steady blue to frantic red as the code ripped through its systems like wildfire. Security drones froze mid-attack. Defense turrets fell silent. Across the chamber, the holographic display of Earth's orbiting target grid flickered and died. The countdown halted with 32 seconds left. The Emperor roared in rage, his blade swinging wide as he realized what had happened. Vexed Talon seized the opening, driving his remaining weapon across the Emperor's chest in a spray of sparks and blood. The ruler staggered, cybernetics failing, before hurling Vex back with a burst of raw kinetic force that cracked the floor beneath him. Smoke choked the chamber. Dead machines and bodies littered the floor. The assassins dragged the wounded away as the Imperial alarms screamed through every corridor of the spire. The AI core lay dead, its threat ended, but the Emperor himself had vanished in the confusion, retreating through a collapsing side passage before anyone could finish him. Vexed Talon stood among the wreckage, his armor scorched, his mask cracked, watching the flames consume the Emperor's throne room. He said nothing, even when Kale told him the Empire would hunt them all now. His eyes burned through the drifting smoke toward the place where his master had fled. The ninja retrieved his blade from the console where he had left it buried and turned toward the exit. The Emperor had escaped, but the planet killer was gone, Earth was safe, and for the first time since this began the galaxy's most feared assassins were no longer loyal to the throne that had ruled them. As they fled the burning spire, the ninja looked once toward the stars beyond the city's haze. Somewhere out there the Emperor lived, wounded but dangerous, and the war between them was only beginning. For now, though, the people of Earth still breathed, unaware how close their world had come to vanishing in fire. The Imperial spire burned through the night, flames climbing its steel ribs like the fury of a planet scorned. Entire districts below drowned in alarms and chaos, as soldiers and civilians alike scrambled to make sense of what had happened. Across the capital, rumors spread like wind in dry grass. Some claimed assassins from the far reaches had struck at the throne itself. Others swore a ghost in human skin had walked through Imperial fire to kill the Emperor. The truth moved faster than either story, carried by terrified guards who had seen the ruler of half the galaxy bleed. In the depths of the shattered spire, The surviving assassins gathered among smoke and ruin, their black armor scarred by plasma fire and broken steel. Kale leaned against the collapsed pillar, one arm bound with scavenged bandages, while the others scavenged weapons from the dead. None spoke at first. The silence of betrayal hung heavier than the stink of burning circuitry. The Emperor had used them all like pieces on a board, willing to discard his most loyal killers for convenience. They had believed themselves predators above politics, but tonight the galaxy reminded them they were as disposable as anyone else. Vexed Talon stood apart, mask cracked down one side, watching the flames eat through the platform where his duel with the Emperor had ended. He had fought the ruler of the galaxy to a standstill, spilled his blood across his own throne room, yet the man had escaped alive. That failure burned worse than his wounds. He had built his life on precision, on clean contracts and perfect kills. Now nothing felt clean anymore. The Empire had made him a weapon, then tried to bury him with the bodies it ordered him to make. He looked toward the ninja moving silently among the wreckage and felt the strangest thing of all. Respect. The man from Earth had shut down the Doomsday AI, crippled the Empire's plans, and turned its most feared assassins against their master without saying more than a handful of words. He fought with no wasted motion, no hint of triumph, as if victory itself were just another task to be completed before moving on. When he finally turned toward the assassins, his expression gave away nothing, but his presence felt like a storm held tightly behind stone walls. The smuggler crew arrived late, slipping through the smoke with faces pale as moonlight. Briggs swore loudly at the sight of the ruined chamber, demanding to know why every job he agreed to ended with someone setting half a city on fire. No one answered. The mining drone floated behind him, dented but loyal, its sensors blinking as if confused by the scale of destruction. Somehow it had survived everything from plasma storms to collapsing corridors without so much as a scratch on its ridiculous paint job. Kale broke the silence first, saying the Emperor would hunt them all now. His pride would never allow this insult to stand. Already the Imperial fleet would be mobilizing, stormtroopers spreading through the capital, intelligence networks tracing every whisper about assassins and shadows and rebels. The spire might burn, but the Empire itself would not fall so easily. The ninja listened without moving before saying they would leave the capital before dawn. His voice carried the calm weight of someone stating gravity existed. No one argued. Even Vexed Talon, who had once vowed to kill this man, only nodded sharply and ordered his surviving assassins to gather supplies. For now, they shared a common enemy. They moved through the Undercity in small groups, slipping past checkpoints where soldiers barked orders at frightened civilians. Fires still burned across the streets where Briggs's bar brawl had spilled into full-scale rioting. The crew disguised themselves among refugees fleeing collapsing towers, while the assassins melted into alleys like smoke. Only the ninja walked openly, yet somehow the soldiers never saw him, eyes sliding past as if refusing to acknowledge what their instincts screamed was there. By dawn they reached the outskirts where the freighter waited. Briggs cursed at the damage scorched across its hull but admitted it could still fly if the engines held together. Kale boarded first with the wounded assassins, while Vexed Talon paused at the ramp to stare back toward the rising sun over the Imperial capital. He had spent years carrying out the Emperor's will without question. Now he imagined blades in the dark cutting toward the throne and felt no loyalty left to stop them. The freighter lifted into the pale light, engines rumbling like thunder as it climbed through clouds blackened by smoke. The capital shrank beneath them into a sprawl of towers and firelit streets, the Imperial spire still burning like a signal to the entire galaxy that the unshakable had been shaken. Only when the stars opened around them did anyone speak again. Kale asked the ninja what came next. Earth was safe for now, but the Emperor lived, and his vengeance would reach further than any of them could imagine. The man from Earth sat cross-legged on the floor, blade resting across his knees, eyes closed as if already far away. He said the Emperor would return to finish what he started. When he did, they would be ready. Briggs groaned at the thought of more suicide missions but admitted there was no going back now. Every criminal syndicate, rebel cell, and border world would hear about the assassins who turned on their master, about the shadow warrior from Earth who walked through Imperial fire and lived. Rumors would spread faster than fleets. Some would call them traitors, others heroes, but all would know the Empire could bleed. Vexed Talon stood near the cockpit, silent as the stars slid past. His assassins waited for orders that never came. He finally told them the Eclipse squad was finished. They were free to vanish into whatever corners of the galaxy would still hide them. Some left without a word. Others stayed, not out of loyalty but because revenge burned hotter than fear. The freighter jumped to hyperspace before the Imperial fleet locked down the system. Starlene stretched across the viewport, swallowing the ship in white fire before dropping it into the quiet between worlds. Hours later, the crew gathered in the mess hall where mismatched lights flickered overhead. Kale raised a glass of stolen brandy to the man from Earth, saying without him they would all be dead beneath the spire. He neither smiled nor answered, only nodded once before returning to silence. News reports began flooding through smuggler channels within the day. The Emperor declared martial law across 3 sectors, executed half a dozen generals for failure, and placed bounties on every assassin known to have betrayed him. None of it changed the fact that the galaxy had seen the throne stumble. Entire systems whispered rebellion now where fear had kept them silent before. The ninja left the crew at the edge of a border world, vanishing into its dust storms without saying where he was going. Briggs swore under his breath about lunatics who never paid their passage but somehow left entire empires trembling. Kale watched the horizon long after he disappeared, as if expecting him to step from the shadows again at any moment.